So the thing about Modern Family that really does always drive me insane is that we are told as an audience that Phil wants to be the safe spot for his kids, or at least that's what we're supposed to like get from him wanting to be the cool dad and wanting to be the guy that his kids can go to and all of that. But then we see in all these other moments that that's really not true. And I think a really big one is when Luke wants to stop practicing magic. And Claire is like, oh, honey, yeah, your dad might be kind of sad that you don't want to practice magic anymore, but like, it is what it is. He just wants you to be happy. If you tell your dad that you don't want to practice magic, he'll understand. And then she goes, I'll tell him for you. So then Phil comes into the room and she's like, Phil, honey, Luke doesn't want to practice magic anymore. And without listening, without hearing anything else, Phil just says no. And it's not because he hasn't raised a quitter, it's because Luke is too good to not like magic. How dare his son be so good at magic and then not want to do it anymore? Now that's just rude. He's not gonna let him. And yeah, it turns out that Luke is so good at magic. He's so much better at magic than Phil ever was or could have hoped to be. And Phil's just like testing him on all these things, and Luke is just like, no, no, no. And then it turns out later down the road on the episode that Luke is getting bullied by all these kids for practicing magic, and that's why he doesn't want to do it anymore. And it's like embarrassing for him, which is why he didn't want to talk about it. And he also felt like he couldn't talk about it because how do you tell your dad, who's obsessed with magic, who literally will not let you quit magic because you say that you're just not into it? He refuses to believe you, not because he thinks that you're lying, but because he thinks you're too good to give up the gift. How do you tell that guy that you don't want to practice magic anymore, or that you're getting bullied for practicing magic, or any of that? And then there are other times where Luke turns out to be so good at magic that Phil gets mad at him for practicing magic, and being better, because Luke just takes up all these things that Phil loves and is immediately like a savant at them, which is crazy. And it also bothers me so much that as like a show, we don't get to see this pan out into anything where Luke is like good at these things and like makes a career out of it. He's so good at singing that he becomes the Phantom of the Opera. Never hear about that again. He's so good at like trampolining that's like his entire personality for a solid 3-period stint or whatever, for an episode. Nothing. But Phil gets mad at him for it. Phil gets mad at him for whatever he becomes good at. But on top of that, the thing that like breaks my heart about it is this isn't the first time that we see Phil kind of betray Luke's trust or make it so that Luke can't be the guy, Phil can't be the guy that Luke goes to. And I think the biggest one is when they're in the roller skating episode. Okay, 2 seconds. Cold coffee, man. I was drinking warm coffee. I forgot to I didn't forget. It's Saturday. I've been spacing out all morning, listening to Taylor Swift, and I forgot to make myself like a cold coffee. And cold coffee is better. It's just better. Iced coffee is better. Where was I? What was I saying? There's a roller skating episode, and I've discussed this episode from this point of view of Cam, finding out that Mitchell had a lover before him and being like, I'm totally cool with it, I'm cool, and then getting mad that the rest of the family seems to like this guy better than they like Cam, immediately, because this guy is just a better person in any way, shape, and form. In any way that you look at it, the guy, Teddy, that Mitchell had dated before is just a better person, but it's not the point, I know. There's another part of the episode that's like a side story where Luke is binge eating and freaking out and having a hard time, and Manny's trying to interview him to see if he's like his hero or whatever, and then gets mad when Luke is like, you only ever think about yourself, I'm having a hard time right now. Which is fair and valid because Manny treats Luke like his sidekick, but Luke also sometimes treats Manny like their sidekick. It really is I feel like it's such a middle school relationship at that point that you can't get mad at either of the kids for it. But Luke is like, you're only ever thinking about yourself. I don't have time to be your sidekick today. I'm going through something. I don't want to talk about it, but I'm going through something. And he's binge eating about it. And then finally, at the end of the episode, he tells his mom, I've been having such a hard time because we were supposed to write about our hero at school, and I don't know how to tell Dad that I didn't write about him. Because Luke knows that his dad would be butthurt and angry and probably really passive-aggressively mean about it if he goes, hey Dad, we had to write about our hero in school and I chose Mom. I didn't choose you, I chose Mom. So Claire, who's like so honored that her child sees her as his hero, like so honored because she's so used to being treated as like the sidekick, the butt of the joke, or whatever, because she's the stay-at-home mom, and like it's so continuously treated as if that's not a real job when she's literally working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, putting her ass into everything that she does. Like just her entire body goes into everything that she does every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She is never off the clock. She never even tries to be off the clock. And oh, there's a separate thing that I want to talk about later. So Luke goes to her and he's like, well, what's a hero? And he starts listing off traits and he's like, that's all you, Mom. So I wasn't thinking about it. I was being stupid and I wrote about you instead of Dad. So instead of getting to be like, Mom, I had to write about my hero at school and I chose you, he went, I'm so terrified to tell Dad. Can you tell Dad for me? Because Dad's gonna be mad. And that's not like a safe space. That's not a safe parent to go to. That is a parent who's like, if your kid is scared enough to not be able to tell you something because they think that they're going to hurt your feelings, that means that they're putting your feelings ahead of theirs, which is, you know, a good thing in some ways, but not in a way where it's a school project and the kid is forming a binge eating disorder and makes himself physically sick at a roller rink because he's eating so much because he can't think of how to tell his dad this very certain easy thing, this simple thing of, hey, I had to write this thing. I chose Mom. You're my hero too. Phil wouldn't accept you're my hero too. He just never would, and it breaks my heart. How we see all these moments where it's just like Phil puts his own feelings before he puts his kids' feelings, and yeah, it's a sitcom, and yeah, he learns in the end, but does he? Because his kids learn too. His kids learn too that he's not the guy who can be trusted in these scenarios, which is why they always go to Mom. But I always talk shit about Phil. I do. I always talk shit about Phil, and to be fair, there's so much that you can say to talk shit about Phil Dunphy. There really is. If he weren't played by Ty Burrell, who is just the most charming man alive, I think, it would be so much easier to hate Phil so much more quickly, but because he's played by Ty Burrell, it's hard to realize how much you hate Phil until you realize that you hate Phil, and then you're like, ooh, I hate you, but I was having a dinner with my real estate agent last night. She's the one who helped me to buy this house, and I love her. But we went out to dinner to like finally be able to celebrate having bought the house. It's been a month, but we've both been so busy that it like took a while to actually get together for this. And we were talking, and I was just like, yeah, I used to date a real estate agent, and he was like so whiny about his job all the time. And then I've dated other guys who claim to be real estate agents and then are like, but I'm trying to get out of the game because it's just such a hard job. And I'm talking to her and she's like, yeah, obviously it's a hard job. All jobs are hard. She starts listing off all these things. And she's like, and the worst part is I know so many male real estate agents who like will push you into the sale. They like strong arm you until you get the sale, and like will make it their life's mission that even if you hate the house, you have to buy the house. So one thing I will say about Phil Dunphy is he never complains about his job. He seems to genuinely love his job, and he never like strong arms people into making the sale. He takes pride in his work, and he takes pride in how good of a real estate agent he is and how much he just wants to make people happy and get people into the right house and into the right home and find them their like forever home. And how amazing is that, and how wonderful is that? And I wish we could have seen more of that side of him when it came to his parenting, instead of always having his parenting become like the end of a punchline. Because I think that Phil Dunphy has the potential to be a well-written dad character, because they were trying so hard to make Phil and Claire Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore in the Dick Van Dyke Show. They just were. They obviously were. But it never worked because Dick Van Dyke may have talked some crap about his wife every now and then in episodes, but by the end of the episode he was always like, oh my god, I'm such a dunce. I can't believe I'm trying to imply that my wife, by having me tuck my son into bed at night so she can wash his hair, is using me. I can't believe I implied that when clearly she's trying to make it so that A, she still has time to herself, B, can feel beautiful, C, can make me see how beautiful she is, because my wife is the most stunning human being on the planet, and C, so I can better see and get to know my own child. I can't believe that I had that. Like, that's an actual episode that happens in the Dick Van Dyke Show, where he's complaining the entire time because an Andrew Tate ass little bitch in that universe of the 1950s is like, men are being frauded by their wives. If your wife is trying to get you to do the laundry, oh, she's using you. You do all the work. Don't believe her. She doesn't need help. And it's like, the world has never changed. The world has never grown. It's just always been the way it's been. My crazy eyes are showing, I know. That one hurt because I was just like, wow, this could be a play-by-play real life episode of any TV show today, and it would still work. They could have just copy-pasted, still work completely. Except the man probably wouldn't learn his lesson by the end of the episode. Dick Van Dyke learned his lesson by the end of the episode. He was like, oh man, I've been such a dunce. I've been such a doo-doo head. I've been such a jerk. My family deserves better. They deserve me to be there and be with them. And he did. And he realized and he learned. And if you're gonna make it seem like Phil and Claire are the Dick Van Dyke, Mary Tyler Moore of this like world of Modern Family, I loved that. You can really see why they were trying to do it and how they were trying to do it, but they always missed the mark because they made Claire the punchline every chance they get. And Mary Tyler Moore sometimes became the punchline, but in a much kinder way because the 1950s was a wholesome time period for TV, even when it wasn't, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But on top of that, Phil always ends up still being a not awesome dad because, I don't know, maybe no one on the show Modern Family actually know what it looks like to have a continuously good dad who's not Phil Dunphy. You know, you get me, you feel me, you understand what I'm saying? Anyways,